Hey everyone, it's cyoubx, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the DaYan ZhanChi. When I unboxed this cube, I was really pleased with it, but after doing my first average, I was actually pretty upset. Instead of doing a quick review right after the unboxing, what I decided to do was I decided to do about 1,000 solves. Right now I've done about 950 solves on this cube, and so now I feel like I have a more nuanced position and I can make a more succinct review. So what's going to happen in this review is I'm going to very briefly go over the pieces and just the size and general things like that. And the second part is I'm just going to give my recommendations of the cube and whether or not it's really worthy of getting and whether or not it'll actually benefit you. And then the third part is just an optional average of 5 that you can watch. It's really just a demonstration of how the cube turns a little bit more closely, because words don't necessarily describe everything about the cube. Okay, so first thing, let's just look at the size of the cube. These two are pretty much exactly the same size, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure that the ZhanChi just comes from a modified mold of the GuHong. The easiest way to show that is this dip here that I talked about in the unboxing on the ZhanChi is in the exact same position as on the GuHong. And what that tells me is that it was just a modified mold for the ZhanChi, and so the pieces should be the same size, so therefore the cube should also be the same size. Let's look at the individual pieces, just because they're pretty interesting. I won't go into too much detail about the mechanism. If you want to see a very detailed review about the objective things of this cube, I suggest watching Tall5001's video. His link to that video will be in the description, so check that out if you want to see something more objective. So for the edge piece, I'll just compare it to a GuHong very quickly. You'll notice that it's really the same thing. What happened with this design is they put wing edges on the sides of the edge pieces to prevent popping, and they also implemented torpedoes for this piece, for the edge piece. On my old GuHong, I have a similar structure following Waffle's tutorial using screws, and it's the same idea. Besides that, there's nothing too terribly different. There's a little dip on the edge piece so that there's less friction connecting onto the core, which I will show you in just a little bit. And then there's also a bubble here on the edge piece, which the GuHong does not have. As far as the stalks of the edges go, they're pretty much the same thing. Looking at the corner pieces are extremely similar from the GuHong to the ZhanChi. There's this huge dip here that's on both of them, but what the ZhanChi does is there's a secondary dip right there, which the GuHong does not have, and what that does is this creates a spot for the ZhanChi wing edge to fit comfortably in there. And as you can see there's a huge hole there to decrease friction, as well as during corner cutting there's no friction at all. There's flash on both the GuHong corner and the ZhanChi corner. What I did was I sanded the ZhanChi corner, not following Isavir's tutorial, however it is his idea, I believe. You can watch this tutorial on how to do it. Basically, you just take sandpaper and you sand away until the flash is gone. What that does is it creates a smoother surface for the torpedoes to ride on. I honestly don't know if I recommend this mod, because before the mod I actually kind of like the clicky feel. Right now I still like the feel of the ZhanChi, but it's a little bit different and it's a little bit almost too smooth. I do like a slight click, but it's really just personal preference. As far as the individual pieces go for the edges and the corners, it's a similar structure to the GuHong, except that, well, the edges are pretty much the same. The corners use a sliding interlocking mechanism. For the GuHong, if you've ever assembled one, you know that there's two wedge pieces connecting all three together. This does not. This just has built-in wedges that slide into one another. So it's kind of a neat design, and there's nothing on the bottom, so it's pretty easy to just have this bottom be somewhat flimsy, but the plastic is pretty strong, so I wouldn't worry about it breaking. As far as the manufacturer's sort of like molding fault, I guess, it seems like the edges are fairly beveled. However, when I first got it out of the box, there was just a bit of flash on the edges that were actually pretty sharp, and by now I've sanded most of them away, so there's nothing too much to show. But just a note, like if you get it and it seems sharp, just take some sandpaper or file and maybe even a knife and just smoothen that out. Taking a close look at the center and the core is the same. It's just a DaYan core. If you want, you can switch it out for an alpha core, but I personally don't mind the DaYan cores at all. So this is just a GuHong on the left and the ZhanChi's on the right. You'll notice, hopefully, that this centerpiece on the ZhanChi is considerably thinner. It's just a slimmer profile, whereas the GuHong is a little bit more bulky. And you'll notice that the edge piece is completely flush with the center piece, which causes a little bit more friction, which I personally enjoy on the GuHong because if you lube it with shock oil or diff oil, you'll get this nice gummy feel. With the ZhanChi, because it's so low friction, it doesn't really matter what you lube it with, it's still going to be extremely fast and crispy. Looking at the center caps and screws, the center caps of the GuHong and ZhanChi are really similar. You'll notice though that the ZhanChi is a little bit thinner, just this top portion is a little bit thinner, and the GuHong is just a little bit thicker. And there's nothing otherwise that's too different except for the slip on both of these. If you have trouble with the ZhanChi cap staying on, you can sort of shave off the flash that's on this side of the edge cap, and if that still doesn't work, you can get masking tape and put two pieces on opposite sides of the center cap to create a wedge so that the cap stays in. The screws, this is just a newer DaYan, so it's pretty much the same thing as the ZhanChi. It's just a new screw spring set. Inside there's obviously a washer and a spring, so it's pretty standard for DaYan cubes. A quick note about assembly. What I've found to work best is when you're assembling a cube, you want to assemble the corners first, just like you would with other cubes, hopefully. And at the very end, you take your edge piece and instead of just pushing it directly down, you want to maybe twist it and then push in. And for disassembly, it's the same process. You pull under like you would normally, but instead of just pulling out and risking something to break, you just twist a little bit. I've seen people take it out by the corner as well. I don't recommend that just because I think it'll possibly break the cube a little bit quicker and decrease its lifespan. So now turning. This cube is very fast and very smooth. Although that's a good thing, I think there are flaws with that, just because a cube that's too fast and too smooth seems kind of bad in my opinion. The great thing about the GuHong that really made it work was that there was a slight click feel. So even though this is incredibly fast, because there's a slight click, it makes the cube easier to control. Now, I'm not saying this cube is hard to control, but in other reviews I've seen people go like this and say how easy it is to control. But in actual solve, you're not just going to be turning one side at a time this cleanly. You're going to be doing finger tricks, and I think that really makes a difference because this cube is really smooth and it is very fast. But what I've seen happen with my own solves is sometimes this bottom layer will misalign just a little bit. So even though this corner cutting is really good, what's going to happen is it's going to lock up a little bit. And that does cause your times to go slightly up. Of course, it really depends on how you hold the cube, so it may just be my own fault. So speaking of corner cutting, just quickly go over this. It can do well over 45, however, my tensions are very tight. It can still pretty much do 45 though. Yeah, my tensions are very tight right now, and the reason for that is just to reduce popping, because this cube does still pop, and I will go over that in just a little bit. Reverse corner cutting, it's about half a QB, maybe a little bit more. I don't really use reverse corner cutting anyway. As far as M-slice cutting goes, what I've seen people do is sometimes they hold a cube like this, and then they expect it to cut, which this cube does, but if you want to be smarter about it, what you can do is you can adjust your cube like this. So when you're holding it, just misalign the left layer and the right layer just a little bit, so that when you do a turn, you're just doing regular corner cutting and you're not doing any of this reverse corner cutting. Just a quick note about lubrication. This came with factory lube that was extremely greasy, and no one actually knows what it is, but I have a feeling that it's petroleum based, and my reasoning for that is because as I was sanding down the flash on the corner pieces, what I noticed was the green side had a lot harder plastic than the blue side. The blue side seemed to have really soft plastic, and if you watch my unboxing, you remember that there was a ton of grease on the blue side. So I'm thinking that whatever the lubricant was, it was actually dissolving the plastic just a little bit. And I still haven't wiped it out, but I basically just applied a nice layer of diff oil, and it didn't really do anything. Very nice crispy feel. So now just a note about pops. What you're looking at right now is a solve that I caught on camera, which is actually very hard to do because I don't really videotape a lot of my solves. So this was sort of a major pop. I had another one that was bigger, but it wasn't on camera. I've had a total of 3 pops, and You know, that's not terrible, seeing as I've done 1,000 solves on it, but I will say it is still really disappointing that this cube does pop as much as it does. So after that pop, I did tighten the cube half a turn on the yellow side, and so far I haven't gotten any more pops. I don't know if it's actually because I tightened it or because I'm just getting better with this cube. It doesn't really pop straight out. As you see, it doesn't come out like that. What happens is it actually does twist. So when you do too aggressive of a corner cut, this edge piece can twist a little bit and then just shoot out, causing other pieces to fly out. And that is annoying, but you know, as you just use this cube more, you just get better at it. With this cube, my times are now finally about the same as they were with the GuHong I was using before. I have to say that the first 300 solves I did, I could not even get a sub 15 mean. And that was really disappointing for me, just because I've heard great things about this cube, and to get such a bad average made me feel sort of a little bit disheartened. It seems like there's a huge improvement from like solve number 700 to now. It's like I suddenly know how to use this cube. Coming in using a GuHong for so long, what I have to say is that you just have to turn a lot lighter. This cube has a very nice crispy feel, and it does not take a lot of effort to turn. With the GuHong, it doesn't take a lot of effort either, but it just seems like you can be rougher with it and still get very good turning quality. With this cube, it seems like you have to be more accurate just because it's so fast that you have to be careful. So my recommendations for this cube, you know, I honestly can't say if this beats a GuHong. I think a well-modded GuHong, I mean this is a stock GuHong, but even so, I think a well-lubed and a well-modded GuHong still wins over the ZhanChi. The factory lube that this comes with is really nice, but okay, so here's the more important part of the review, and that is the subjective part and sort of my recommendations of the cube. I'll try to make this short, but I do want to emphasize that this is really important. Comparing it to a GuHong, I have to say that I still like the GuHong over the ZhanChi, and if I had a second chance to buy a cube, I think I would buy a second GuHong, or in this case a third GuHong, and not the ZhanChi. The ZhanChi is a good cube all around, but for me personally, I do like the feel of the GuHong better, and I do get better times with the GuHong. I still average around 12 or 13, but it just feels awkward. I can get 12 or 13 a lot easier in the GuHong, and I just like it more. This cube has grown on me, but I still don't think it's necessarily worth it considering the price. The GuHong has gone down considerably. I think you can get it for around $10 now, and it is still a great cube. If you're worried about popping on the GuHong, you can always use cheap screws from a hardware store, and this actually does work, so you know, if that's something you want to do, I think this, the screws with the GuHong beats this ZhanChi. So my recommendations for getting this cube, I think if you're really trying to get maybe sub 14, sub 13, then I guess this cube would be maybe, it's a potential cube for you. I have not improved with this cube, but I can see how people would. I think if you're averaging around 25, 20, maybe even like sub 20, it's not really worth getting, just because, sort of what Thross said in his review, you know, it's not going to help you that much. You know, I mean, the GuHong is plenty fast, and considering that the old world record was, you know, used a GuHong, I would say that you can at least get closer to that time before getting a ZhanChi. The other note is, I think a lot of the hype with the ZhanChi comes from the fact that Felix did set the new world record with it, but I have to say that that doesn't really mean anything to me, because who is to say that he wouldn't have gotten a better time with a different cube? You don't know that. But yes, the ZhanChi is good, and obviously you can get fast times with it. I just don't think it beats the GuHong, and I don't think it's necessarily worth it if you're still averaging over 15 seconds. If you're averaging around 40 seconds, then I guess you could get it, not because it's going to improve your time, but just because it's not going to worsen your time. You don't really need fast turning for sub 40, sub 30. You don't even need it for sub 20, so I don't think you need the ZhanChi. If you want a ZhanChi, obviously get it, you know, no one's stopping you, but don't expect anything too great. Really the only perk of this cube is it just has a different feel that's very refreshing. It's fast and it's crispy, which is not something that is seen a lot today, and it's also a lot quieter than the GuHong. But, you know, it's a good cube. I don't know if the hype is really deserved, though. In a lot of ways, I think this cube is just a GuHong that's made to not pop, but as you saw in the popping video, I don't know how well that works. You know, it's just, I think if you're a collector, you're obviously going to get this cube. In fact, you probably already have one. But if you really just want to improve your times, I don't know if this cube is the one for you. I think if you have a GuHong, go ahead and use that. If you have a store-bought, then go ahead and just get a ZhanChi and just skip the GuHong entirely. Just don't get both, because I don't think you need both. Just pick one or the other. GuHong is a lot cheaper, and I think it's actually better. ZhanChi is good, it's fast, but it's a lot more expensive, and it's not better than a GuHong. It's just a different feel. So really, you just have to pick your poison and go with it. Right now, you're just going to watch an average of 5. I'm not going to be talking after that, so if you want to just end the video now, go ahead. For more suggestions for what videos to do, please go to my Google Moderator module and submit a suggestion or cast a vote. So until next time, toodles.